everyone, and welcome to Sunup. I'm Lyndall Stout. We begin today by focusing on locally grown meat. There's been a sharp increase in demand during the pandemic, and federal funds allocated to support the effort through the CARES Act. Today, Sunup's Ed Barron takes us to meet a local processor in Logan County.
Before 2020, there was already a high demand for meat processing.
Once COVID hit, things exploded. Meat shortages in the news all over the place. I think people started to panic. We would get 100 phone calls a day asking where they can purchase some meat.
COVID-19 caused a major flux in meat markets, with delays in slaughter dates crippling the industry.
You were having to call and schedule the appointment before the calf was ever born.
Right now, we are completely booked for the next 2 years.
With the upheavals in the meat industry, it wasn't long until local producers began to take notice.
We have 3 stores that sell our beef, and we have a 4th store coming online at the end of the month. We have a restaurant that sells our beef, as well as our online sales have just blown up.
As a result of the pandemic, the demand for locally sourced meat products grew exponentially. However, many processing facilities couldn't keep up.
This expansion is going to allow us to add more dates for this year and next year, of course.
That's where the CARES Act came in.
The governor's office and Secretary of Ag, Blaine Arthur, they set aside $10 million of CARES Act funding to specifically go to help meat processors, new and existing meat processors in Oklahoma, to either expand or to finish building new facilities.
With the help from the CARES Act, companies like Homestead Meats were given the opportunity to expand in order to meet demand.
We had planned on going ahead and expanding ourselves, just going ahead and taking the risk and doing it, and then receiving this grant from the CARES Act has been a tremendous amount of help.
While the pandemic has devastated many business sectors, the symbiotic relationship between processor and producer has flourished.
The consumer wants to know where their beef comes from, and is it locally sourced, and who their rancher is that's raising it, and what are their practices? What do they feed their cattle, and where were they raised? A lot of these questions are coming about as a result of the pandemic, and so more and more people are wanting to get back to knowing their local beef producer.
The want for the local beef and local lamb, local goat, all of that has just skyrocketed. We're just excited for the future, honestly, and we're really grateful for the CARES Act funding to even make this possible, honestly.
And with the inclusion of additional meat processing funds in the most recent COVID-19 relief bill, the future of the Oklahoma meat industry is looking bright.
We're going to see more, newer, better equipped, inspected meat processing facilities in the state of Oklahoma. There's going to be some nice opportunities to make some money in the meat business in Oklahoma.
In Logan County, I'm Ed Barron.
One of the big topics at the Winter Crop School was Dr. Josh Lofton's talk about the cover crops that are the study that you're doing. Let's kind of dive into this plot of land that we've actually been to before out here on Sunup. Tell us about what you have.
Yeah, so we've been looking over the last couple years at cover crops for various reasons. What we wanted to do is, indifferent if we didn't find a yield benefit or we did, what are some of the secondary benefits that can kind of bring us along? That way, if we're yield neutral from a cover crop versus no-till versus conventional till, what are some of the other benefits cover crops are bringing to the table? And what we're looking at and what we've kind of been focusing on is integrating cover crops into a weed management system. So we're looking at wheat and canola. We really like our small grains to help control weeds. They get a lot of biomass. They can just shade out the ground. When we terminate them, they have a lot of good residue that kind of continues to shade out and just provides that physical barrier to where we hope to either eliminate or slow the germination and emergence of weeds. So that's kind of the crux of it. It does provide some issues when we talk about nutrient cycling because it likes to tie up a lot of our nitrogen. So we've been trying to add various other components into a cover crop mix that would maybe help offset some of that carbon fixation of the nitrogen. And what we've looked at here is canola, and we know the benefits of canola. Even when we've had failed canola crops going into a summer crop following, we are still getting that % yield increase of our summer crop. So trying to help offset our costs here, trying to see how beneficial it is and how much of a weed management tool we can actually do by integrating that small grain and canola into our system.
Let me just ask it this way. Have you found a bottom threshold on the minimum that you can do while still getting the results?
Yeah, I think if we hold wheat as our top, right, because we want the biomass, right, we do still see a continued benefit when we go down to 40 and 30. It's just not quite as good. The benefit we got is where we actually take our canola down quite a bit. We have historically recommended 5 pounds of canola and 50 pounds of wheat. What we saw is actually when you go all the way down to the bottom, the 1 pound of canola, 50 pounds of wheat, that seems to be our best case scenario because it still provides that good amount of biomass. We've looked at the grazability and the palatability of some of this, as well as we're gonna look here at the recovery in a couple of months. And we really found that the benefit really comes where we put a lot of wheat out there, that 50 pounds of wheat, and 1 pound of canola is kind of that sweet spot. Still hopefully provides us that benefit. The canola hopefully here will either be winter killed, as I do believe it will this year, or we can come in with an early herbicide application and take care of just 1 pound of canola fairly easily, as opposed to 5 when it's a much larger part of the system. So that's kind of where we're finding our breakdown.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Josh Lofton, cropping systems specialist here at Oklahoma State University. And if you'd like to see the video that he made during the winter crop school, go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
Hi, Wes Lee, and welcome to another edition of the Mesonet Weather Report. When you are plagued by a drought, you welcome any kind of moisture that comes along. Fortunately, this year, an abundance of snow has made up for some of the rainfall lacking in the Northwest. Earlier this week, parts of the Panhandle received a couple of inches of snow that will contribute slightly to the soil moisture picture as it melts. Liquid water, i.e. rainfall, fell on parts of the state as well this week. As a cold front moved through, it created storms that dropped rain on most Mesonet sites. This 5-day map from Wednesday shows amounts of 1 inch or more in parts of the west and close to 3 inches in the east at the Tahlequah site. This has our soil moisture picture looking pretty good in the state. This 4-inch fractional water index map is showing green in all areas except Texas and Cimarron counties. 0.8 or higher indicates good moisture conditions at the sensor and a green color. Deeper into the soil at 24 inches, we still have some dry soils in the west that would benefit with additional rainfall. Forecasts for next week are looking to a wetter than normal situation. However, keep in mind that a good rain this time of year might only be 1/4 of an inch. Now here's Gary with a broader look at the drought picture.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Well, as we exit January, we see possibly more chances for drought reduction coming up. But first, let's take a look at that latest Drought Monitor map and see where we're at. We've really seen a really good reduction of the drought across southwestern Oklahoma. We do have just a little bit of that extreme drought left in Harmon, Jackson, and the surrounding areas, and then a little bit of the moderate to severe drought. And that also extends up into west central Oklahoma, all the way up into Ellis County. Then we have, of course, the moderate to severe drought up in the western Panhandle. And a lot of our abnormally dry conditions in south central Oklahoma have also been eradicated. Just a little bit left there. So pretty good shape as we start to enter February. As we take a look into February, the first week or so, we do see increased odds of above normal precipitation, especially across northern Oklahoma as we get into that first week. This is from the outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. So that broad area of above normal precipitation possibly extends all the way up to the Canadian border. And here's an interesting map. We take a look at the USDA's primary wheat areas, the winter wheat areas across the country. The dark green are the major crop areas, and the lighter green are the minor crop areas for winter wheat. And then we superimpose the Drought Monitor depiction on there. So just a little bit of Oklahoma still in the drought area for wheat, winter wheat, up in the far western panhandle and in southwestern and west central Oklahoma. But only 5% of Oklahoma's winter wheat is considered poor to very poor. So hopefully as we get into that first week of February, we can see even more drought reduction, maybe eradicate it over across all of southwestern and west central Oklahoma, and maybe the panhandle as well. Something to hope for. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Some Oklahoma producers are looking for a forage alternative after a sort of disappointing start to their wheat crop. Dr. Alex Rocateli, our forage systems specialist, joins us now. Let's talk about oats as an alternative to wheat.
Yes, as I always say to producers, oats right now might be the plan B if your wheat didn't make it so far when you plant during the October, and we had drought conditions. We also have some ice storms, and I know that in some locations we want to have the wheat as a forage source. So right now planting oats can give that forage that the wheat's supposed to be covering for the early spring.
Some people may be wondering if it's too late to plant oats.
Not for oats. Right now actually it's too early to plant oats. It's still too cold, and also it's very wet right now. The best time to plant oats, I would say, is mid-February to early March, when soil temperatures is about 43 Fahrenheit, and keep on that temperature for 3, 4, 5 days, and so the oats can emerge.
So if you want to kind of get your ducks in a row, though, in the meantime, how should people get started if they've never done this before, or if they want to improve something they've done in the past?
So if what they're planning is exactly to go in a very sparse stand of wheat, or if they try wheat last September, October and didn't come up, honestly, there's not much to do. Just go there and no-till the oats straight where your wheat was. Off-seeding, I would say like 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch, a little shallower than we do for wheat.
What about fertilizer considerations? Is there something we can keep in mind now as we're planning ahead?
That's the trick. If you had already fertilized for your wheat in October, in September, October, but your wheat didn't come up, and so comes the fall and the winter, nothing much happened. So pretty much the nutrients is still gonna be there. So actually you can still go there and just place your oats and not bother much with fertilization.
The ultimate goal, of course, will be to feed livestock. What is the stocking rate for a field, or how does that compare maybe to wheat fields that people are more used to using?
So when you talk about oat has a similar to a little higher quality than wheat, but we know that wheat is already an excellent forage for cattle, so I would say keep it the same, as good as wheat when we talk about oats. Yield also is comparable. I would say I like to be conservative and say that a producer can expect 1,500 pounds to 2,000 pounds of forage per acre. That gives about, as a rule of thumb, 1.5 animals per acre.
Great, and you and the team have a fact sheet on this issue for a little bit more in-depth reading.
Yes. We have a fact sheet on planting spring oats for forage. There we go also on the time to start grazing, the time to stop grazing, how much nitrogen fertilization to apply, and all.
Okay, great talking to you. We'll look for that fact sheet. Thanks a lot, Alex. And for a link to the fact sheet that he mentioned, go to sunup.okstate.edu.
Last Last week on the Cow-Calf Corner, we visited with you a lot about stage 1 of calving. As you recall, there's basically 3 stages of the parturition or the calving process, and stage 1 was what took place before the cow actually went into labor. What we want to do today is to visit more about stage 2 of calving, and in particular, what impacts it might have on that baby calf. Stage 2, as you recall, begins when we first see the appearance of a water bag or baby calf's feet, and stage 2 is over as that baby calf is totally delivered. And as you recall from previous cow-calf corners, we know that stage 2 should be about an hour in length in the case of that first calf heifer, and about half that long, or about 30 minutes in length, for the adult cow, one that has had calves before. If the calving process, the delivery process, takes much longer than that, we start to have some pretty important impacts on the health of the baby calf. You see, as the baby calf is going through the birth canal, there are times when the umbilical cord is going to be pinched off as it passes over the pelvic rim or the pelvic bone of the mother cow. As that birth process takes place, especially if it's over a long period of time, then we have pretty severe deprivation of oxygen and a buildup of carbon dioxide and some of its byproducts, particularly lactic acid. And this results in a situation we call respiratory acidosis in a baby calf. One that's been through a really difficult birth that took several hours to deliver. And this is especially true when we have a backwards calf. We may have one that is born with a very severe respiratory acidosis. And that means, of course, that it's very low on oxygen, very high in carbon dioxide, and its byproducts, lactic acid. That is where we come in as cow-calf managers to try to do our best to get that calf started breathing so that we can correct this situation that this calf has been put into. We want to remember that the way that calf starts to breathe is by contracting the diaphragm muscle. That's the muscle between the lungs and the abdominal or the digestive tract. That has to contract in order to expand those lungs. If we got that calf hanging over that rail fence, or even if we're holding him upside down by the hind legs, we're basically inhibiting that diaphragm muscle from being able to contract and allow the lungs to go ahead and expand. I think this will help you as you work through this calving season or any calving season, and you have those few calves that come from a difficult birth that are going to be slow to correct that low oxygen, high carbon dioxide situation. Tickle him in the nose with that stiff straw. I think it'll really help you. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on Sunup's Cow-Calf Corner.
We're talking cattle markets now. So Derrell, how would you assess the beef and cattle markets so far this year?
You know, so far in January, I think we're far enough into it to kind of get a sense of how the new trends are, if you will, for the year. If you look at feeder cattle markets, the calf markets and stocker markets have actually been quite strong here in January. The bigger feeder cattle are clearly showing kind of the impact of these higher grain prices. So they're a little bit weaker. So we've got some, some difference in those markets. Fed cattle markets are just kind of stable. I think really trying to get in a position where we can sort of see some spring seasonal strength in that market.
Are there any negative factors that are impacting the cattle and beef markets?
You know, we've got several challenges going forward in cattle and beef markets. Obviously, the ongoing pandemic is still an issue with respect to the food service markets and the supply chains. That's a bit of an issue at this point in time. Probably the biggest change we've seen in cattle markets has been the dramatic run-up in grain prices in the last 2 or 3 months. So we've got the prospect of higher feed cost. And when you combine that with the ongoing drought conditions in the western half of the U.S., some producers certainly are going to experience some real challenges going forward from a feed cost standpoint.
You know, drought, you mentioned drought. Last time we spoke, you were really hitting that drought could be an issue. You know, recently in Oklahoma specifically, we've had a pretty big large storm system roll through, some rain. How do you think that's going to impact at all going forward?
Well, so far, you know, we've seen kind of a hole. Oklahoma, southern Kansas, much of the wheat area has actually gotten some moisture. I think we're in a little better shape. Parts of Texas that were dry have gotten a little bit of moisture, although they're still dry. What we've been able to do is kind of hold the drought at bay from expanding farther east at this point in time. Western states are still very dry, although some areas are getting a little bit of moisture, but you know, it's going to be really critical by the time we get to about April to see how we're set up for the spring conditions.
Well, that's, you know, that's positive for Oklahoma producers going forward, but like, what's some other positive factors with these cattle and beef markets that you're seeing right now?
You know, obviously we continue to see good demand at this point. I mean, we have had this nice run up in boxed beef prices since the first of the year. That probably indicates that we did a reasonably good job of moving product through the holiday period, cleaned it out the pipeline. Now we're rebuilding that. And we also had in the last trade data some very positive news, strong exports and with imports moderating a little bit. So all of those factors from a demand side are quite positive at this point.
You know, with all that in mind, what is the outlook that you have for, you know, going forward for the rest of the year?
You know, we're still cautiously optimistic that we're going to see some improvement from a price standpoint in 2021. It may turn out to be kind of a case of sort of two halves of the year. With the challenges we've got right now and with the you know, the time it's going to take for to roll out the vaccines, get the pandemic under control. If we can stay on track with that through the first half of the year, that may be a little bit of, you know, a little bit of stress in the market here in the early part of the year. But as we move through the middle of the year and into the last part of the year, there's a decent chance that we could see things start to improve significantly. Supply should be a little bit more supportive. We're looking for a little bit tighter cattle numbers going into 2021. Demand again continues good, and the trade picture is improving. So if all of those factors continue at this point, the second half of the year could look quite a bit better.
Then we just have to worry about normal problems just like drought and, you know, lack of forage.
That's exactly right. And, you know, obviously the drought conditions and the feed markets as we get into the new growing season will be really critical.
Well, I can't wait till normal problems are the only thing we have to worry about.
Exactly.
All right, thanks, Derrell. Dr. Derrell Peel, Livestock Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
It's that favorite time of the show where we dive into the wheat markets. Kim, where are we with the wheat markets right now?
Well, prices are relatively good. You look at Panhandle and Snyder, you got about $6.15 for forward contracted wheat for harvest delivery. You come over to Medford, it's at $6.30. That basis is a minus 15 at Medford and a minus 30 at Panhandle and Snyder. Now you go back last year, you had the Snyder price at $4.55, you had the Panhandle price at $4.65, and the Medford price at $4.75. So we got about $1.50 or better price this year. One other thing I need to point out is you got a minus 15 and a minus 30 basis now for the 21 crop. You had a minus 25, a minus 35, and a minus 45 basis last year. So stronger basis, better price this year.
So would it be safe to say that there's that cautious optimism? And then on top of that, what should producers do with that cautious optimism?
Well, I think there's some potential in the market. You look at the price outlook. Oh, I'd say plus $1 if the weather doesn't cooperate. If the weather forecast is right, we have above average temperature, below average moisture, we're going to have a short crop. The market needs our crop. And you lose a little bit in Russia in the Black Sea area, we could pick up $1. However, weather cooperates around the world, you got a big crop coming on, I think we can lose $1 too. So I think producers need to look at this, and there's a lot of variability in our risk in the market, but there's also opportunity.
So what should producers do whenever it comes to putting a price on their wheat?
Well, they can forward contract. Yeah. They can, I mean, what would you have done last year if you could have gotten $6 wheat?
That's true.
So I think, you know, you can forward contract, but you can also buy put option contracts and put a minimum price on it.
So when it comes to that question, which put should they use?
Well, it depends on how much they want to spend and what kind of minimum price they want to establish. Say they want to establish a minimum price somewhere around $5.60. Well, that July contract and the September contract, you look at those two prices, they're within 2 cents of each other, $6.45 and $6.47 right now. So you can buy a $6.40 put It's going to cost you about 54 cents for the July contract, 58 cents for the September contract. I'd spend 4 more cents to get 2 more months coverage out there. You use maybe a minus 25 basis, that 58 cent premium, you got $5.60 minimum price there, $5.57 in one, $5.61 on the other. So I think I'd look at that, but you can, if you don't want to spend, around 60 cents, you can buy it out of the money. Say go down to $5.60 put, it's going to cost you 22 cents for the September contract. Is going to cost you about 20 cents for the July, 2 cents for 2 more months. I'm going to do that. That's going to give me a minimum price of $5.13. So for 20 cents, 25 cents, I can get a higher price than I had last year. So I think they want to consider that. So it's just how much you want to spend and what kind of coverage you want.
It's kind of nice to have options this year, isn't it?
I think if you're going to use options, this is a good year, but you got to remember, if you use that 560, you're out of the money almost $1. That means the market's got to drop $1 before that even starts to pay off. You got the protection, but you're also giving up that 20 cents. Is it worth it?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Kim Anderson, grain marketing specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
That'll do it for us this week. A reminder, you can find us anytime online at sunup.okstate.edu and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.